Hello, hashtag ESI LGN. Welcome back to the panel stage. It's really exciting to introduce this next session, who is coaching the coaches. This is going to be moderated by Dr. Lucy Zhu, and she's a lecturer in esports. She's a program lecturer for BSc Esports at the University of Northampton. I know we've got quite a few students who've come down from various esports courses, so a special welcome to them. Yes! And I hope that you're getting to meet loads of people and learn loads of things this weekend. To be fair, even the non-students are definitely learning a lot so far today. So, without further ado, please welcome everyone, Dr. Lucy Zhu, Saahib Reehal, who is the Esports Manager at the Football Association. We have Tom Dore, the Global Head of International Relations, the British Esports Federation. Please keep up the applause. Come on, let's keep the energy in the room. Ólafur, Steinarsson, who's the CEO of the Esports Coaching Academy, and James Pirelli, the Senior Product Manager for FITGMR Incorporated. Guys, I will leave it to you. Dr. Lucy, thank you so much. Enjoy. Take it away.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to this panel, especially when you are surrounded by those fantastic smell of food and you choose to stay with us. Thank you so much. So before we move on with this exciting topic, let's have some introductions from our speakers, starting from Saahib.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Saahib Reehal. I'm the Esports and Gaming Manager at the Football Association. So I run our team, the E-Lions, who compete in the FIFA E-Nations, and also run our kind of gaming offering as well. So one of the teams that sits beside our 3 Lions, our Lionesses, our Para-Lions, is our E-Lions as well, which is a growing structure at the FA.
Hi there, my name's Tom Dore. I'm the Global Head of International Relations for the British Esports Federation. My background with British Esports is that I have essentially set up all the work that we do with schools and with young people and within education through the British Esports Student Champs and the BTEC that we run with Pearson, and a lot of our community projects that we've run over the years have fallen under me. I'm also a teacher. I've taught for the last 19 years, recently just finished. And linked to these conversations as well, I also have a background in sport, and I'm a dad as well. So this all links together with what we're going to talk about in terms of coaching and how we support and develop young people.
Yeah, so I'm Ólafur Steinarsson, or more easily Ollie. I'm the CEO of Esports Coaching Academy, and at the Esports Coaching Academy we educate coaches and provide them with programming for youth esports programs. I spent about 12 years working in the gaming industry, mostly around esports and organized events. And when I moved back to Iceland in 2018, I founded the Icelandic Esports Association and started working on youth grassroots esports as a monetization base for that ecosystem. We got that up to around 3,000 kids training, or about 5% of all kids between 8 and 16 in the country. And now we're taking it internationally through the Esports Coaching Academy.
Hello everyone, my name is James Pirelli. I'm currently a Senior Product Manager at FITGMR. I oversee our entire digital product portfolio pertaining to in-game and out-of-game coaching, whether it's player development or coach development. A little bit about my background. Before this, I worked at Cloud9 Esports as a product manager, so I focused more on their in-game performance training, mostly D2C, a little bit of B2B though. And outside of that, I did come up through the collegiate space, so I competed for UCI Esports, played Tier 2 for Counter-Strike, and currently am a consultant for UCLA Esports.
Thank you all very much. A little bit of information about myself. So my PhD is in sport management with a focus on the esports spectators and players' psychological pathway and behavioral intentions. Apparently this microphone doesn't like me talking about research side. So a little bit scene setting. The recent research shows that esports coaches are considered as facilitators of a dynamic, relational, and situated process within a complex and uncertain landscape. And if you ask around, there are no 2 esports coaches in the industry that share exactly the same path that took them to those positions. And we now are now seeing more esports coaching programs providers in the industry trying to fill in the piece of this standardization, professionalization of esports coaching. And my question would be, what do you think are the meanings or the values of such programs, and what do you think are the challenges of such programs, and can we learn from traditional sports?
Yeah, I think right now, I think one of the biggest challenges is probably credibility. I think it is a big challenge right now, something that comes with the certifications is an element of kind of anxiety around whether they were or are adding the value that they need to be, and whether they are hitting the right pinch points for coaches or wannabe coaches that want to enter the scene. I think that's a big challenge, but equally I think something like this doesn't come and the journey doesn't start without its challenges. Ultimately, the biggest challenge could be that no one's doing anything, and at least something is happening for it to move forward, is my 2 cents, I suppose, on that.
I think there has to come a recognition from individuals and from the industry that we need to do more. That everybody's, and what we can't question is the technical knowledge of esports coaches. The game knowledge, the technical knowledge of esports coaches, fantastic. What we need to think about is their holistic knowledge about actual coaching. Not coaching esports, but coaching in general. And looking at what happens in traditional sport and seeing for example, if I want to set up a football club for my son in the local town, the things that I would have to do to become a coach of that club. Be that certification, be that safeguarding qualifications, being that having a criminal background check. That's what happens in traditional sport. That doesn't yet happen in esports. And that we can't allow that to happen. As parents, as people working with young people, developing an industry, that can't be allowed to happen. We have to address that. So we have to therefore have some sort of standardization, to have some sort of recognition of different qualifications and the things that people should be doing to help develop this. We know that from traditional sport, that just because you're a good player doesn't mean you're a good coach, doesn't automatically mean you're a good coach. And a lot of coaches in the esports space, that is in reality what happens. And we know that some of the most talented players actually are potentially the worst coaches, because they have so much natural ability that they can't understand why people can't do this themselves. And so it takes, the challenges are whether the industry itself, whether we recognize that we as an industry need this to develop the community and to professionally develop our coaches moving forward.
Yeah, I think Tom hit the nail on the head there. And I would just add to that there's also just so many different types of possible programs for us to run around esports coaching that all require slightly different skill sets, right? So when I'm talking to people about the kids that we're coaching through the Esports Coaching Academy, or I've personally coached, people always think that I'm working with some, cracked 12-year-old and teaching them like super advanced 90s techniques or something like that. But in reality, the general population of 12-year-olds just needs to know some fundamental information that most gamers, have a technical understanding of and ability to deliver. But to Tom's point, they're unable to do so because this is such basic knowledge that they've forgotten how they learned and struggled with it at the time when they went through it. So I think we at the ECA, we focus very specifically on youth esports, right? So we're targeting kids between 6 and 16, and we're not a professional development organization, right? I'm looking at how do I take kids from the skill level of 20 to 80. I'm not looking at how do I take kids from skill level 95 to 98 or 98 to 100. And I think these are just all uniquely different coaching approaches, coaching skill sets that are involved in that, but we require all of them. So we can't just develop one coaching thing for esports and be like, that's it, we're done. We have to continuously adapt. And that plays into the continuous change of the ecosystem as well. Whereas when I was coaching kids 2019, everybody wanted to play Fortnite, right? But now the number of gamers that recognize themselves first and foremost as Fortnite gamers has dropped significantly, and you have more general gamers, so attracting kids to programs now needs to have a more general approach instead of a game-specific approach. And that includes an entirely new coaching skill set that we have to be able to adapt to as the ecosystem ebbs and flows. So I would say there's all the inherent value of this that Tom mentioned, but there's also inherent challenges because of the esports space, because of the rapid changes in the ecosystem, and because of the fact that we're not talking about building a coaching layer on top of an existing infrastructure. We're talking about building the entire infrastructure basically below pro level in one go.
Yeah, those are all really good points. I'm going to take it from a different approach here. I do think that traditional sports do offer some good things in esports, but generally speaking, esports, it's a completely different beast. It's not the same thing. At least with Cloud9 under the Training Grounds initiative, the goal of it was to develop the next generation of gamers to go pro. Inadvertently, they started developing the next generation of coaches that got picked up by tier 1 orgs, whether it was as head coaches, assistant coaches, analysts, or entry-level management positions. Now, with that initiative, we did have some traditional stuff. We did have background checks. We did make sure that your coach had to be at least top 1% in the respective game. They had to go through several interviews in the process. Those interviews consisted of teaching a particular lesson for their game that they specialized in. And then on top of that, even when they did get hired for contract, it didn't guarantee work. They still had to fight against these other coaches that were the best outside of the tier 1 pro scene in order to get contracts to develop that experience and grow. But we were also really hands-on. And then under the new ownership with Training Grounds, under the FITGMR Training Grounds, we've kept that tradition going forward. So to date, we've furnished about 37 coaches to the pro scene. So I know you mentioned earlier that not 2 coaches have the same path. Well, with Training Grounds, we actually developed a path where if you go on Medify and you look at the top coaches, you're going to notice either Cloud9 Training Grounds as their top credential or FITGMR Training Grounds. It's very common in the scene, at least in the States. I know in Europe it's not as standardized, but even then there still is no standard, right? It's kind of why we've kind of invested hundreds of thousands of dollars at our current company to develop programs to build that standardization. Because most coaches that are not pro coaches, tier 1, I'm talking like coaches, whether it's Fnatic earlier, or G2, or C9, or EG, they don't know how it is to be a coach at that level. No one's seen behind that veil. That veil is kind of unknown for most people. So at least what I've done previously working at Cloud9 is I've kind of pulled that veil apart to teach the next generation of coaches. What does it look like to be a tier 1 coach? What are the frameworks they use, the skill sets, the knowledge? What does a holistic approach look like? And Tom mentioned earlier, a good coach isn't necessarily a good player, and he's right. You need to be a good leader, but most of all, a good teacher. And if you're not a good teacher, you're not a good coach.
Yeah, thank you all very much. I believe we probably need more time than 35 minutes to cover this topic effectively. But building on what we discussed just now, and some of you has already provided some answer to the following question, is, this question is going to be two-folded. So in terms of what we can actually do to help with the current challenges in the industry, the two-folder, because I want to touch 2 levels. Like the first is the elite level. As Tom mentioned, that many fantastic players would like to pursue a career in coaching after their service. But how do they, of course, it's more than the gameplay skill they need, and how do they actually get those support? Or what do you think are the effective methods to support them with the knowledge, skills, experiences in a widest and most holistic perspective? And then the second is about the community level, is, we now have lectures from the colleges who actually coach their esports teams to compete in British Esports Championships. And also we have other, coaches from various different backgrounds, not necessarily from an elite background, and they are coaching the children, coaching the teams. And how do we provide, what do you think are the effective methods to support them to be the coach, to coach the generations?
Yeah, I think on the first point, to be honest, the biggest thing really is empowering the coaches to understand what it is to be a coach and defining what a coach is. Because I think for a lot of people going into the scene, being a coach sometimes is just, being the coach that takes someone to the game and takes them to the next level and gets them to win championships, etc., etc. But actually, there is a lot more to it than that. There is also the mental side of things, which I think is really important. And I think making sure that a coach understands from the get-go that it is twofold in that sense, and that they need to be supporting players or teams from many different angles is really important. In terms of, I think, the ways in which we can help support the scene to get to that point, I think, to be honest, it's empowering people like yourself and the British Esports Association to really do that and help us bring that forward. And also from, I suppose, a football association perspective, is helping use our kind of range and our kind of body to really push that and market those things and reinforce them to be credible.
Okay, I'll let the others talk, because I'm conscious by the time we get to the end of the queue, then we will have said a lot. Look, for me, it's about the wider holistic piece of coaching and understanding our responsibilities around that. And one of the massive ones for me is around safeguarding and around child protection. And the fact at the moment, through coaching platforms that exist online. I'm not going to mention any specific names, but places you can go to find coaches to coach you online. How many of those coaches have been through child protection training? How many of those have got security background checks? Where are they coaching young people? I know for a fact that a lot of them at the moment, it's on Discord or via WhatsApp, which are end-to-end encrypted services. And you could have a 50-year-old guy in Minnesota coaching a 12-year-old boy in London on an end-to-end encrypted service with no checks, no measures. Not only is that a danger for the individuals, the coachees, it's a danger for the coaches. Coaches should not be putting themselves in that sort of situation where they could be accused of whatever. We know abuses are happening online. The NSPCC are here today talking about programs that they're developing within the esports and gaming space. British Esports are working with the NSPCC to help develop these safeguarding procedures and safeguarding courses. As coaches, and I'll let these guys talk about the technical stuff, but that is absolutely critical because there are abuses happening online at the moment that we in esports have to make sure that we don't allow to continue. And by training coaches properly, by having standards that we expect that match and exceed other traditional sports, because we're a digital space, that's going to be the absolute critical starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to that, and I think like this is a huge piece in building confidence as well for parents to put their kids into these programs, right? Because speaking as a dad, I would not feel comfortable if my 7-year-old was speaking to a 15-year-old in Minnesota via end-to-end encrypted communication. So, but I think a huge thing about this as well is that we need to give people the opportunity to execute and experience, right? Who have pushed the coaching skill set forward in traditional sports over the past few hundred years? It's coaches, right? So I think it's also important that, you know, we as organizations working in this space check our ego at the door and realize that, you know, yes, we've put in a lot of work to try and take the first step, but this is a continuous conversation that has to go between pretty much every coach and whatever organization is empowering coaches to constantly update and evolve the base of knowledge that we're operating from. So that's the thing, you know, when I walked in front of the first 10 kids learning Fortnite in Iceland, I had no idea what to do. I created my Fortnite account 5 minutes before the first lesson. I'd never played the game, but I had been a gamer for a long time and I'd studied the game, and I was able to deliver enough value that 8 out of 10 wanted to return immediately afterwards and retained over time. So I was like, okay, I'm doing something good here. And then by going through coaching hundreds of kids, that's how we got to the current methodology that we're teaching. But that current methodology is not going to be the same thing that we teach 5 years from now, because there will have been other coaches that have gone out and they will have learned new things, and we will have optimized this process further. So I think like creating that feedback loop at any aspect, whether it's the pro level, the community level, or anything, is key for us delivering support for the long term and not just building programs that are going to rise and fall in a 5-year time horizon.
Yeah, what we're seeing right now in the US is a lot of pro players, whether it's Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, League of Legends, when their pro career ends, they tend to go to college. College is like kind of like a safe space for them where they can either compete again or usually grow into a coach there. And what we're seeing though is colleges lack infrastructure to develop these coaches, right? There's no one to train these coaches, there's no one to develop them. I mean, they are usually probably the most skilled and experienced at their university. But what some universities do, like UC Esports or even UCLA to a certain extent, Maryville as well, and Fisher College, is they actually partner with pro orgs. So pro orgs do come to their university, and they actually train their teams. They actually practice with their teams. They scrim with their teams. They also even talk to their coaches to talk to other coaches that are tier 1 pro coaches, right? And that's a way for them to develop that they would have never had before. So I think the biggest challenge is just the lack of collegiate infrastructure right now. And it's something, at least at FITGMR, we're trying to build that infrastructure for a lot of universities. I know we have contracts with like Utica University, University of Southern Mississippi, and a few others to try to help their coaches to build to that level, whether it's the frameworks or the skills that they need. But yeah, the challenge is definitely pro orgs need to dive more into the collegiate space. That's where it's at.
Thank you so much. So from all of your answers, we can see that when we talk about who's coaching the coaches or what qualifies as a good coach, it's more elements than just the gameplay or the coach itself. It's more elements associated with this term that matters and contribute to the quality and credibility. So my next question is about how do we know that these programs or who's coaching the coaches are doing the job right? Like, what do you think are the, like, for example, evaluation indicators or the way to measure whether this program actually doing a good job?
I think, to be honest, one of the big things for me when evaluating what a good coach is, yes, the standard core values of a coach, being a good manager, being tactically adept, etc., but also a coach's ability to have something that I call tactical stamina, which is when you look at the wider competitive landscape, for example, coaches aren't just there kind of coaching for one match or for one series or for one major, etc. And I think they're there to kind of coach beyond that to many majors and many different competitions. And I think being able to build up to that tactical stamina is something I think comes from a grassroots level, kind of more so, and that's something that's going to be a real key indicator of how good I think that program is, because it allows that coach to be sustainable throughout the entire year, to not kind of go on an upward trajectory for the first meta of the game and then it kind of goes from here and straight on a downward spiral. I think that kind of that kind of stamina is something that I think I would personally judge a program by, for example, is me.
I think what you're saying there is about grassroots. What we're talking about has got to grow from the grassroots. This has got to be something that develops from the grassroots up. I think we've got to accept that in time there are going to be more and more certificates and courses arising in the same way that the FA runs, level 1, level 2 upwards in terms of football, or UEFA has the UEFA CB Pro license. That sort of similar structure is going to grow. But just because you do a course doesn't mean you're a good coach. So in the same way as in traditional sport, you do your qualification, you do your certificate, you then have to prove that you can actually do it in real life. So there is the opportunity, we feel, British Esports, that we create certification, then people have to go away and actually develop the practical experience over a period of time, develop a logbook, and then are able to come back and show that and demonstrate that they have been doing this to a certain standard. That then linking with a DBS check in the UK, or different thing in different countries of security. Wherever you are and happen to be in the world, that then creates potentially the opportunity to create a list of certified coaches, a database of certified coaches who you can say have gone through certain baseline of things. And therefore, as parents, if parents are looking for a place to go and find a coach for their for their son, daughter, then that's the opportunity to understand that people have actually gone through a certain level, a certain process. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think the way I look at quality of programs is I look at there are going to be quantitative things that we can look at just in terms of how much did skill increase in certain things, but I think there's also just the qualitative part of, did the kids like the program, right? Like, did it accomplish the goal? If you're training a bunch of 6-year-olds or a bunch of 10-year-olds, you're not training them to become professionals, you're training them to become better human beings that serve as a greater foundation for performance later in life. So, when I'm looking at coaches or advising people that are looking for coaches, I tell them, the esports skill set and the gaming skill set is what we can teach, especially when you're dealing with kids at a younger age. You're relatively quick as an adult to gain the necessary knowledge to curate that training environment, but your ability to work with kids, connect with them, influence them, change their behavior, that is what I look at as quality. So I love what Tom is talking about in terms of having a period where you have to showcase results before you go into some sort of recognized database. I think that's a great way of doing it, and I agree as well that there's going to be a lot of certifications, there's going to be a lot of different courses, there's going to be a lot of different voices, and there will probably be major schools of thoughts that are going to be different, right, and not going to work the same. But we have that in traditional sports as well, with different countries doing different things. I always remember the fact when a friend of mine went to train fencing in Romania, I think, or Budapest or something, and he wasn't allowed to wear protective gear because you were supposed to feel your mistakes, right? Which is very different from how the Icelandic training happened, right? So even at that point, we're gonna see different cultures, which is why I think, for us at the ECA, it's important that we are just presenting a base. We are presenting something that has room to grow into the unique culture that fits each country, and looking at just all the measurements that we need to go to ensure that quality, building that centralized database globally. I think these are excellent ways of ensuring quality.
So my company doesn't necessarily focus on the K through 12 type of coaching for the younger generation. We're more fixated on coaches that are generally between the age of 17 and 24, looking to grow into whether it's a professional coach or maybe tier 3 coach, semi-professional. So the way that I look at it is from like a coach that's looking for a program that's really good to continually grow them all the way to that level. And what I look at is who built the product, right? So if you have a coach development product, was it built by people who worked for a tier 1 org before, right? Do they work for EG, or do they work for Fnatic, or do they work for Team Liquid or one of these organizations? And then how many people did work on the product? Is it just one person, or was it maybe a dozen? I know for the product that we currently have at FITGMR, it's called CDP, or Coach Development Program. We've had over a dozen people work on it. People from director of training at C9, people from mental conditioning trainers and physical trainers that have worked with other organizations like Ghost Gaming and stuff like that. But then all the way down to coaches that are both training at the tier 1 level, but also tier 2 coaches as well, to get the whole holistic approach. So when you are looking at a program, who built it matters the most, but also their success metrics, like how many of their coaches did move on to go into the tier 1 scene, tier 2 scene, right? If you see a program that keeps furnishing pro coaches, it's a good program at the end of the day. But once again, our program's built a little bit more towards that higher caliber. So if you're looking more for like a K through 12 type of coach, our program doesn't kind of solve that purpose. But it does solve for if you're looking to be a pro coach one day, it definitely gives you the skill sets for it.
Thank you so much. So what I take away from your answers is like when we coach the coaches or coach the players, it's more than just letting them become better coach or better players, but better people in general, sustainably. Right. I believe we, in order to conclude this panel, I don't think there is a simple answer in terms of who's coaching the coaches, but there are some very inspiring answers to take away. I think we probably have a couple of more minutes for any Q&A. Are you happy for that, speakers? Yes? Okay. Some short questions. Anybody interested in this? All good? Okay. If you don't have any questions, then yeah, I'll call it an end. And thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.